Welcome to the Hastings Shadmary Show.
I'm Andee Hastings.
And I'm Mali Shadmary.
Together, we own Hastings Shadmary, an Atlanta-based law firm specializing in family law.
This is a space where we talk all things family law and all topics that touch the area of family law, from divorce to custody to self-growth, personal empowerment, and more. We bring you the truth, from our wolf pack to yours. Hello, and welcome to the Hastings Shadmary Show. I'm Mali Shadmary.
I'm Andee Hastings.
And we are so excited to have you today. Today, we're going to be talking about the different types of experts that you can have in a divorce case. We're going to be talking kind of in broad strokes and conceptualizing different categories of experts and how they work, just so you might understand how they could apply to your case. But before we do, let's start with our usual check-in with each other. Andee, how are you? And are you a warrior or a diplomat today?
I'm doing great. I am feeling like a diplomat today, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had multiple back-to-back mediations, and I'm just kind of in that mode for the moment. Really just want to find creative ways to help people solve their problems.
Love that. Love that.
How about you? Warrior or diplomat?
I'm good. I am a diplomat as well. I just have a lot of planning going on. I have some trials coming up in the next month and 2 months. So it's time to lay low and really plan and be smart about what's to come so that when I'm in warrior mode, all the pieces are nicely laid out to set me up to really go be a powerhouse. So that's where I'm at mentally. And I got a ticket this morning.
I know.
Got a speeding ticket. I'm like driving along with Stormy in the car, just ready to get to work, ready to do my thing. And the cop's like, I was sending a voice note while it was happening. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a cop behind me. I hate when that happens. And then the lights come on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting pulled over. Gotta go. Boop, in the voice note. And I try to pull over on the left-hand side of the highway. I didn't know not to do that.
Oh.
So the cop's like on a speakerphone, like, don't go to the left, go to the right. And I'm like, I didn't know. I love cops, by the way. Thank you for your service. But that was my mindset. When I'm driving in the rain, I got to get to work. So then we got to get over to the right. And then there's 2 cops in the car. And then one comes to the window to be like, did you know you were going a blah, blah, blah and a blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I didn't. And they're like, is there any reason for that? And I'm like, just a lady going to work. And she's in here too. Stormy is like looking in the window at them, and they probably think I'm insane. And there's another cop on the other side of my window just looking in my car, and I'm like, sir, in here you're gonna find a Gucci bag, a Squishmallow keychain, lots of lip gloss, body spray, and like a confused girl. Don't know anything. And they're like, okay, well, we cut you a break, we cut it down to this, and you can come fight it in court on this date. And I'm like, or just pay it. And they're like, yeah, you can pay it. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna fight it. Whatever. So that was my morning. And that's me being a diplomat. I was like, I can't be mad about this. Just thank you, cops. But you don't have to yell at me on your speakerphone. I didn't know. That happened to me in college, too. I got yelled at on a speakerphone by a cop because, I don't know, I didn't have my lights on or something on my college campus. And that's the first time I was aware that cops could yell at you on a speakerphone.
Yeah.
What's that called?
A bullhorn.
A bullhorn.
Yeah.
I could hear that over my music. I was like, oh. That's loud. So that's my updates. Just lots of gym time and lawyer time. That's what we got in dog mom time.
And dog mom time.
And today's one of your dog's birthdays.
Yes, our oldest, Ronan.
Cutie pie.
13.
He's the biggest mama's boy of all time. I don't blame him. So, okay. All right. Let's get moving on this topic. So, first of all, experts, okay? Experts are an individual that can be brought into your case to basically help prove certain things, okay? And they can come in to testify about specific things, and they can render reports, and they can help push cases to settlement, and they can also come serve to testify in trial. So we're not going to get too into those nuances.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would add to that is just that a lot of things you could testify to, like different values, but you need an expert
which we're going to get into.
Okay.
So there are different types of experts, and we're just going to cover just different areas that experts can fill. We've got financial experts. There's experts more related to custody. We've got real estate type experts, medical, vocational, technology, private investigators, digital forensics. So let's get into it. Let's hit what I think is probably the most common in a divorce case. Forensic accountants, financial experts. Talk to us, Andee. What are those?
So we use forensic accountants probably more than I would say any other type of expert. And they can do a lot of different things. They can create a marital balance sheet, which is just where they gather all the information with regards to assets and debts. They can trace accounts, trace money, where if money's been going in and out of accounts, they can help try to find hidden assets. They can do what's called an income analysis. So if somebody's saying they don't have enough money to pay support, or they're saying they need support, but they make more than they're saying, a forensic accountant can help kind of dig into that issue too. So they can do other things as well, value businesses, but there's separate business valuators as well.
And so they are CPAs.
Yeah.
And what this is going to do, basically, when you have a complex financial situation, whether that's calculating someone's income and they're a business owner and they're hiding funds and there's stuff we want to try to identify, that's one of the most common sort of things that causes a lot of nervousness with my clients is, oh my God, how are we ever going to prove what my spouse or whatever, what my ex actually makes? Well, a lot of times we do have to go down rabbit holes, and we need to retain a forensic accountant who is a CPA, who we can say, look, the lawyers, we're going to be in charge of discovery in the divorce case. We're going to gather the documents, forensic accountant, that you need. We're going to give you the documents, and you can go down all those rabbit holes and locate where are they hiding money, where do you see different accounts that are hidden, where are they messing around with their taxes. A lot of times the tax returns do not indicate what true income really is for purposes of alimony, child support, attorney's fees, all of those things. So these CPAs, they're killers at their job. They're fantastic. So think of it like this. Your lawyer does the legal thinking and strategizing, make sure that we're requesting the right documents. We have the power under the law to go get the documents to give to our forensic accountant. Let them do an income analysis, like Andee said, or create the marital balance sheet. That's creating a sheet that shows all the assets and the debts. That can be very complicated as well. They're very helpful with things like stock analyses, pension analyses, and valuations. These things are very complicated. And one of the biggest takeaways that I want you guys to keep in your back pocket is that you're going to save money and time in the long run if you, A, of course, pick an experienced family law attorney, and B, have a forensic accountant involved that your attorney is comfortable with and works with frequently, so that the forensic accountant can do the mathing and do all of that forensic work and give it to the lawyer in a nice package. It's more efficient that way, because a lot of lawyers do try to do the forensic work themselves.
Right. And I get this question a lot. I'm sure you do too. Clients are like, well, can't you just do that? Can't you put together the balance sheet?
I'm like,
and here's the thing.
In triple the time.
Right. And even if it were the same amount of time,
right,
we can put them together. I love math. I'm one of those very strange lawyers who likes math. So whatever, it's psycho. But I can't testify about what it says.
Yes.
Because I'm the lawyer. And so, in order to have somebody testify, either you have to be familiar enough with your assets and be able to really move through a worksheet like that, or else you need an expert.
Okay, that's such an excellent point, that there's evidentiary issues. Okay, so if me as your lawyer and you as the client, we put together this analysis together, and I enjoy doing the tracings and looking at all the bank statements. I think as a lawyer, you should have some experience doing that, so that you know the language and you've done that before. And in some very basic cases, it's fine for the lawyer to be doing those tracings and some forensic type work. But if you, client, and me, we go to court together, you and I are sitting there, we're going to have you as the client testify as to how we figured all this out. We're going to create all these very complicated reports and analyses, especially one of the more complicated scenarios is when somebody's got some retirement that they earned prior to marriage, and then they've got some retirement they earned during the marriage. You got to be able to figure out, well, how much of that retirement is marital and how much is premarital, and how much has the premarital portion increased in value. since this divorce has been pending. And that can be complicated. And you as the client would have to be the one on the stand testifying about it. Like you're an expert, and that's just not going to fly. So there's evidentiary issues that would entail, especially in more complex cases, that an expert has to be the person that sits in court and testifies. But Andee, can you talk to us about like how important is it that we pick an expert that has experience, their CV? How does that work when we're tendering someone as an expert in court? And also it impacts how we negotiate. Talk to us about that.
So, it's critical. It's like anything, any professional that you're going to utilize, you want to have the best. And their CV is basically their professional resume. And it lists all of their experience, background, training, everything that they've done. And you'll find that with some of the really well-known experts, the other side will just stipulate to that. They'll stipulate to the fact that the person that you have is an expert because they don't want to argue over that.
Meaning we're not going to object to you trying to tender this person as an expert. They've got street cred. We know they're qualified. These people have to have immense qualifications to stand up in this, because I've had before where someone's like, look, let's just use my CPA. They'll throw some stuff together for us. And that is different. Your CPA, my CPA, they are not a forensic accountant qualified to come testify in court. And even if we could figure that out, it's never going to end up very well. They're not trained in how to handle being cross-examined. They're not trained. They don't think the same.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, it's not to say that we don't use CPAs as another form of experts in a case, because they can bring, valuable information. But exactly what Mali said, they are not accustomed to doing kind of this aspect. It's kind of the difference between like a podiatrist and it's different kinds of doctors. They specialize in different things, and while they both went to medical school, doesn't mean they specialize in what the other does. So
it makes me feel like if I were to go to a yoga instructor and be like, teach me some bodybuilding, they might know some of the speak and could teach me some, but it would not be to the level that I needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And same thing with experts in your cases. So yes, they do need to be kind of at the top of their field in this, and the key in it is cross-examination, which for any normal human is stressful when it comes to court. But when you're up there and you're defending all of these analyses and complicated business concepts and that sort of thing, you really have to know your stuff. And
totally. And I've had experts on the stand that were new, learning the ropes, and didn't do well being cross-examined, and that can really hurt your case. There are some forensic accountants who are both CPAs and have their Juris Doctorate, so they went to law school as well. So these guys, they are highly trained in both really family law at this point when we're using them as experts and work as a CPA. So they really are powerhouses. And Andee mentioned that something that a forensic accountant, a financial expert, I'm kind of referring to them as one and the same here, they can also do a business valuation. So there's multiple things that a forensic accountant can do as an expert. They can be an expert for purposes of an income analysis and figuring out what the income is. Like we said, we also said they can be an expert in creating the marital estate, identifying and valuing assets and debts, complicated things like stock, pensions, things like that. They can do these calculations to figure out what is marital, premarital, how does that work? They can also do business valuations. So let's just hit on that briefly. What does that look like when an expert comes in as a business valuator?
So it's not unusual that one or both parties has one or more businesses. In this day and age, we're a very entrepreneurial society. And so one of the things, the business often is all or in part a marital asset if it was created during the marriage, and that's an entirely different podcast, which we've done before as well. But the business valuator comes in, and there's different methods of putting a value on a business for determining how to equitably divide it. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to divide that business. It might mean that you get other assets to compensate you for your interest in the business or vice versa. But you need somebody that knows all those valuation approaches to know, because different businesses also have to be valued in different ways, as you can imagine. I mean, a doctor's office is going to be valued differently than, say, like an IT tech services business. So they come in and they figure out what's the appropriate method of valuing the business, and then they take it upon themselves to do that so that we have that for mediation and trial.
And something that I have had come up is that people may want to be, my clients will say, I want to hire this cheaper person that specializes in business valuations. And there are companies out there that do that. And in my experience, it's not going to work. We want to be working with forensic accountants who are experienced in family law and know how to value a business for purposes of divorce. Right. And it's far, far different than going to one of these companies that values businesses predominantly for purposes of buying and selling businesses.
Completely different.
Yeah. So we want to be careful of that. You don't want this is an investment. You're going to have to invest in the top of the top people to advocate for you and find the right answers if you want the best outcome possible. If somebody brought one of these valuators that specialized in buying and selling businesses, they're valuing businesses normally for not purposes of divorce, they're going to be very easy for someone like me or Andee to cross-examine and rip apart that valuation. And it just would have been a waste for you. So, we've talked about, too, your CPA. When I work with really a lot of high-income people or people with really complicated financial situations, I am working hand in hand with their personal CPA, asking all kinds of questions. A lot of times we're hiring a forensic accountant who works with their CPA as well. Right. But the CPA is not typically an expert in the case. I rarely have them come testify or anything like that. The forensic accountant can get information from them and work with them. So CPA is a little bit different than having an actual expert in the case. And do keep in mind that in every case, in every category of expert that we're going to be talking about, there could be an expert for really anything in the world, as long as we find people that are qualified. So if you have a very nuanced issue, one that we really haven't hit on here, I can't even think of an example, but you never know. Now that I say it, it's going to come up probably in one of my cases. But, sometimes people bring the most novel issues to me and say, this is the issue in my case. And I'll say, we got to find an expert, search the country for a forensic accountant or whatever kind of expert we need who knows about this specific issue and has some experience, has that street cred, if you will, on their resume. They've testified. They've probably got published, studies. They're really respected in the industry. The more nuanced the issue, the more important it is that you find a highly specialized person that knows how to navigate the courtroom with you as well. So keep that in mind. If you've got something very, very specific or a specific type of company or, lots of business dealings with another country or something like that, it is possible to find an expert that is very, experienced with that specific issue. So keep it in mind. But your lawyer's going to drive the ship on that.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to move out of finance and go into custody. We have different types of custody potential experts. And remember what I just said. We can use experts for any kind of issue that arises. So we may not hit on every specific type of expert that could exist. We're going to give you generally. So let's talk about that, Andee. We've got different things. We've got guardian ad litem's. Maybe we'll start with that. Okay. We've talked about them before. Yeah. But they're an expert for the most part.
They are. They are considered an expert under the law. They're the court's witness. So they don't belong to one side or the other. They're appointed by the court to perform an investigation and make recommendations to the court as to what's in the best interests of the children. It's the person in cases that people sometimes refer to as the child's lawyer. But they are considered experts, and
they don't have to be lawyers.
They don't.
In Georgia anyway.
Right.
They can be a non-lawyer, which I've had great ones that are good.
I have too.
Good guardians that are not lawyers, but typically they're going to be lawyers.
Typically, they understand certain dynamic, unless a non-lawyer can do it as well, and if they've done it for a long time, they understand some of the common dynamics that go on in family law cases.
And really the same fundamental notion is going to apply here. Your lawyer is going to collect the evidence to give to the guardian, help guide the conversations, and give the guardian what they need to make a recommendation, to render a report as an expert to guide the court on what's the best custodial decision for the children. So it's just like a forensic accountant. Lawyer, we are guiding the case strategy and the discovery, the evidence gathering. We're giving it to the expert, and we're helping guide that expert where we need them. So your lawyer is going to remain involved with all of these experts throughout the case. But I tell my clients the same thing I kind of just said about forensic accountants. We want a guardian because there are evidentiary issues that will keep me and you, client, from being able to discuss this with the judge. We need an expert to come in to testify. There's evidentiary issues. If your child is crying out and saying, Mom or Dad does this at the house, Mom or Dad does this, well, that's hearsay. okay? And you tell your lawyer that, well, we need an expert that can talk to the child, really investigate things, hear this information from you, dig in, and then that expert is allowed to testify about it in court. Whereas you and I could not, based on the evidence rules. So that's what I need you to know is there are evidence rules that make it to where we need an expert to be with us to get our point across. And a lot of my clients have a hard time understanding that at first. And also keep in mind that all of the experts that we're referencing, they're going to have a cost affiliated with them. You're going to have to retain them separately than your lawyer. So that's an additional cost, and your lawyer will talk to you about that. That should be worked in to the initial case strategy. I'm always talking to my clients about experts needed in the initial consultation. I'm identifying where do we need an expert, how much is that going to cost. Now, what about a psychological evaluator? Let's talk about those. What are those?
So sometimes in cases, and it's often done in connection with a guardian, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes guardians, through the course of their investigation, will inform the court, the parties, that they feel like the parties need to be psychologically evaluated. They're picking up on certain pieces of information or behaviors that are concerning enough that they want psychological evaluations. So we get an expert psychological evaluator involved in a case, and they do exactly that. They perform evaluations of both parties, render detailed reports. Mm-hmm. They gather information from the parties, from the guardian, multiple sources, and they don't make recommendations with regards to custody or anything like that, but they do make assessments with regards to each party's psychological issues or
and they
lack
can make
thereof.
Diagnoses as well.
Yes.
And a lot of times in divorces and custody cases, we see undiagnosed mental issues, or what we see a lot too is, especially with bipolar disorder, diagnosis of bipolar in the past, and that person says that's not real, which is symptomatic of bipolar disorder. Anyway, that's another topic. And we need another psych eval to check in and say, look, this person hasn't been taking their meds. They're claiming this isn't a real diagnosis. They don't believe it. So sometimes you see that happen multiple times throughout someone's life. And we get into a divorce case or we get into the litigation and we need to do another psych eval. I've got several cases where these parents are they're in litigation trying to modify their current custody arrangement. They've already been divorced, and there were psychological evals done in their past litigation, and now here we are years later. Same issues arising. We need to have another psych eval and see what's going on. You can also have psych evals done on children. So same kind of rules apply, though. This is an expert. There's going to be a different retainer for them. Your lawyer is going to be involved to help share the right information, give the lay of the land to the expert. That expert would render a report and also be able to testify in court. These people are licensed. I don't even know the proper credentialing, but they're counselors, therapists, they're PhDs usually. They're highly credentialed people. And again, these are people that know family law, and they specialize in the area of family law. There are therapists out there, counselors, doctors out there that will do psych evals that aren't familiar with family law, and they've not done this for purposes of litigation. And again, that's where it gets dangerous. I have dealt with that before, and it's very easy to rip apart in cross-examination a psych eval that's not done by someone that specializes in this. And there's another sort of layer to psychological evaluations, whereas Andee said for this kind of psych eval that we're talking about, these experts don't make any recommendations on custody, but there are psych evals that can be done that can take into account, or they can give recommendations on custody. That's called a psychological custody evaluation. And it's just a little step up from a normal psych eval, and that's another type of expert as well. Anything to add on that one?
No, just it's like basically, and a lot of times guardians will ask for a custody evaluator because they want the psych evals, but they also want that evaluator to make recommendations with their level of experience as to what custodial arrangements are in the best interests of the children. That's the fundamental difference.
Yes. So the point to take away is there's all kinds of different experts we can use, and to what extremes we use them? That's up to your lawyer to really navigate. Another type of expert that I've been using a lot is parental alienation experts, and oftentimes these experts are actually the same experts that serve as psychological evaluators. They have a lot this one and the same. So I'm not even going to go there, but any issue that's arising with custody. Okay, if it's alienation, if it's a form of abuse, there's sexual forensic evaluators as well, okay? Different types of abuse entail potentially different types of experts to investigate. So a parental alienation expert is going to come in and they are going to look at the entire case and say, based on my experience and all the evidence that I've been given by this lawyer and all my interviews of the parties and review of everything, I believe parental alienation has occurred and here's why and here's what I would suggest or whatever. It just depends on the case. I find that judges really benefit from having an expert like that involved the more complicated the issues are. So if there's alienation going on, in my opinion, that's one of the most complex kind of cases that we can be dealing with. And having an expert involved is very important. I've been in front of judges who don't know what to do. I don't know if I would know what to do as a judge in some of these really severe alienation cases. They're devastating. So having an expert involved is very helpful and it helps inform the judge. We're using an expert as an educator for the judge, make the judge's job easier. Okay, so we've got parental alienation experts. What about the psychosexual evaluations? What about those?
Well, I mean, it's just, again, a similar idea. It's just with depending on the facts of your case. And, you know, whenever there are allegations of any kind of sexual abuse, they take a particular type of approach, as you can imagine. And if you don't have somebody who specializes in that, they could basically ruin the information that is gathered and render it unusable. And the scary thing about that is that, you know, you might have children or a party that are in a very dangerous situation, but because the evidence wasn't gathered correctly, none of the conclusions that are drawn from it can really be relied on by the court.
And one thing I'll add under the sort of child custody type experts is that if your child has a therapist, that therapist is not going to be an expert usually. And typically therapists don't like to testify. Instead, what we usually see is that the guardian ad litem or another type of expert we're working with, an alienation expert or whoever it is, they are going to work with the therapist to hear what's going on and incorporate that into their investigation. So I get that a lot. People want to depend on their child's therapist, and it's a bit more complicated than that. We really need an expert, not just a therapist to come in. Therapists are not trained like an expert to render reports and stand up on cross-examination. And then there's the whole, privileged information concept. So we're going to keep moving into a few more categories here. We've got real estate next, which sort of overlaps a little bit with the financials, but not really. The biggest expert that I can think of for real estate is an appraiser.
Right. We've had that come up. You don't just, this is the example that Mali gave earlier where we have people that we use. They need to be able to testify in court and know how to testify in court. And so while there are a lot of professionals out there who can perform an appraisal, they're not testifying witnesses. And so they can get torn up on cross-examination. So sometimes, we'll say, okay, well, we want to use this person or this company to perform the appraisals in this case, and a client will say, well, hey, I can get so-and-so to do it, and it's going to be X number of dollars cheaper, which totally understand the desire to, reduce costs, but the cost to you could end up being much greater if the person that you want to utilize does not testify in court.
Totally. And the appraisers, oftentimes both sides hire their own appraisers. It's competing appraisals, and you got to have the appraiser who can really stand up in court. And this is not the same thing as the comparative market analyses that realtors can do, and I get that a lot. Let me just have this realtor run us a CMA, and I'm like, that's not going to stand up in court. You need an appraisal. And I actually think appraisals are very, very important to get very early on in the case because that gives you negotiation power. When you're just negotiating based on Zillow values, or CMAs, it's just highly debatable. When you've got a good appraisal that can really stand up in court, you're going to have stronger negotiation power. So this is an expert that I like to get sooner than later. And they're not that costly usually. Another thing is the appraiser can help you review the other side's appraisals and rip them apart. I need that. I'm not a real realtor or an appraiser. I need an appraiser to coach me to say this is how their appraisal fails. That's how you negotiate to a great conclusion or try a case beautifully. And I've seen good appraisers in court and bad appraisers in court. And there are certain business, like appraisal businesses that you want to use and certain ones that you don't. Again, you want the ones that know family law and they know how to testify and be cross-examined. This is very niche. So people, we've got realtors, we've got mortgage brokers, all these people, and those are not experts. They can assist along the way, having conversation amongst ourselves, but not an expert in court.
Right.
I mean, I think if I brought a realtor to court, I don't think that would be considered an expert. They would just be talking about whatever issue in the case, I guess.
Right.
Really need an appraiser. We also can get appraisers to value personal property, like furniture, artwork, okay? And my general advice is always, hey, unless you are extremely wealthy and you have gotten just insane collectibles over time, worth so much money, and these things aren't expected to really depreciate in value. This isn't just I went to TJ Maxx and got a Coach purse. No offense to that, great purse, but we're not going to have an appraiser value all your Michael Kors and your Coach purses. We're going to value maybe the Hermes bags, the $20,000 Chanel bags, and we would need a professional to come in and do that, render a report. And this is like, I've had cases where there's artwork from all over the world and they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, gun collections, coin collections.
Car collections.
Yeah. That kind of stuff we would need an expert to appraise for us. And that is more rare. It's only when things are expected not have to depreciate it in value.
And another area, and this is kind of random, it doesn't come up in a lot of cases, but when you have private jets, they need a specific type of appraiser. If
Boats.
Tour buses for, celebrity performers, I mean, like there's all kinds of, you can get just down into the nitty-gritty details with this as you can with any other type of expert. So sky's the limit. But when you do that, you want to have somebody, again, who understands and has experience testifying in court, because that's actually part of the credibility that they walk into court with.
Yep. So another type of expert we've got would be medical and vocational type experts. So it's going to vary based on the issues in the case. This one's much more broad. But I remember a case that I had. Okay, so medical, okay? If medical issues have arisen in the case, that might impact, okay, I'm saying I've got a disorder, so I can't work, so I need a lot of alimony. And the other side's going to say that disorder is not real, and that person can work, and they need to go and get a job. Well, if we're going to trial, I'm going to bring an expert that's there to testify about what's wrong with me medically and why everything that my medical records show illustrate that I am disabled or whatever it is. And so I remember I had a trial, and one of the issues on the table had to do with why the parties hadn't had sex in 20-something years. And the wife's attorney brought an expert, and he had to discuss what had gone on with this woman's vaginal health over the years. And I remember they put a diagram up in front of the whole jury of a vagina, and I'm sorry if I'm a 12-year-old boy, but the jury was like chuckling, and it was a thing. It's just a memory that sticks out in my mind of this chart, this big illustration, this diagram, and this doctor is teaching the jury all about it and what was really going on with this woman. So yeah, you can have an expert for vaginal stuff. You can have an expert for any kind of medical disorder, and it's going to vary on what's going on in your case.
Right.
What about vocational?
So vocational experts we don't use them frequently, but, a situation where they'll come up is if you have somebody who worked at one time in a professional career, but they've been out for a long time and now they need to reenter the workforce. And of course, the other side is just like, well, they can just go get a job. And if our position is, well, no, this is what they could reasonably do based on how long they've been out, and this is how much they can reasonably expect to make. That's somebody that we can use to help us illustrate that or defeat the other side's argument. If it's the other way around and the other side is saying, I don't have any skills, there's nothing I can do, we can bring in an expert who could potentially defeat that too. Mm-hmm. Again, very fact specific.
I've never used either a medical or vocational expert for myself. I've cross-examined some, but never hired one.
Same.
Yeah. There's so many types of experts out there that we're definitely not identifying every single one you could ever have. There could be one for anything that arises in your case, which is really comforting. It's expensive, but sometimes with really high-end cases, like you've got to go there. So the last sort of category that we have is like a technology type expert, digital forensic. I'm feeling private investigator type vibe. So let's go there, Andee. What do you think there?
So I had a case years ago that was very, very intensively involved in digital forensics, and kind of at the beginning of that in family law cases, early days. And they can, they can dig into computers, they can find files that have been deleted, they can trace where emails have gone, where they have come from. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they can be used to track information in order to figure out where money has been moved, because there's no other footprint other than a digital footprint. So they're just masters of all things computer, and it's a very specific field, and they can be invaluable, especially in this day and age. I find, with all the technology that we have, and now you've got apps that can mask different behaviors.
And AI is going to become a thing.
Oh,
we're going to have experts on AI for sure to see
yes.
what type of evidence could be created
yes.
That's fake, and how can we prove that it's fake? Well, we'd have to have an expert probably.
Absolutely. That's the next wave.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I like to do is hire a private investigator. And private investigators are a type of expert as well. And they can do some of this forensic work too. They can do the initial work there. What I like to do is I always have like an initial conversation with a PI and say, here's the issues. What can you do for me? Then they will identify what types of experts I need. And they usually have really good people that can stand up in court. And so we'll explain what all of our fears and concerns are about getting hacked and everything. We've seen that. If that's happening to you, you're not alone. That it happens, that especially if you're married to someone that's very technologically advanced, mm-hmm. they can take over everything, take over your phones, create different identities for you that you don't even know. And I've dealt with all of that. And so a private investigator is like a threshold person I'll bring in to say, here's what we're seeing. Who do we need and who do you know that we can hire as an expert in these particular, very particularized areas? And so the private investigator, too, as an expert, they're going to be a bit more, I would say, surface level. And then we can hire forensic people under them as well to come in and serve as experts in more nuanced ways.
Totally agree. And some of the private investigators that we've used in the past, they have, for instance, mm-hmm. a computer analyst that mm-hmm. can, copy the computer, essentially. I won't get into all the...
Right. That's what makes it hard for me.
I know.
How do I not say too much? We're going to have a PI on here at some point to talk to you guys.
We are. But then they can do all the analyses and those sorts of things. But yes, the starting point is usually a private investigator.
Mm-hmm. So I hope you enjoyed this little lesson about experts in a family law case, divorce, custody cases. I hope it was helpful for you. Please, please, please follow us at Hastings Shadmary on our Instagram, Facebook. You can email us with any questions, commentary. We love to hear from you guys. You can email us at podcast@hsfamilylaw.com. And you can please follow the show, share the show with your friends, family, anyone you think might need this. You never know who you're going to come across. Your gym buddy that's complaining about, I'm scared, we need a divorce. Send them to the show. We're here to provide knowledge to help people make smart decisions. So you can find us on Apple, Spotify, what else?
iHeartRadio.
YouTube. YouTube. It's a big one. If you want to see us, check us out on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
The Hastings Shadmary Show is a production of Hastings Shadmary Family Law and 1066 Productions. It is produced by Kendall Walker and Ned Hastings and edited by Ned Hastings.